Hey everyone, thanks for spending this lovely Saturday afternoon with us. My name is Shihua. I work at the Solana Foundation. We're the coordinating entity for the Solana ecosystem. My role there is I help manage the grants program. We have a panel today with some experts on exponential growth. Why don't we kick it off with some intros, and I'll pass it off to Dan first.
All right, wait, does this work? Yeah, all right, we're good now. So my name's Dan Matuszewski. I've been doing this sort of crypto thing now full-time for a better part of a decade. I previously worked at Circle, which is probably how most of you know my crypto experience. I ran OTC market trading there and did most of the open market sort of actions that we dealt with at the time. Did that till about 2019, and then spun up CMS, which is a principal trading shop. So we basically think of us as a hybrid venture liquid fund with no LPs, and then I've been facing the market ever since. I know the man to the next to me right here's older brother, the intern, worked for me and sort of started that lore at CMS.
Yeah, that's a great intro. My name is Jack McCordick. You might know me as internbrah on Twitter. I've been doing crypto stuff for about 4 years, but yeah, definitely got started through my brother working with Dan at CMS. We were locked in the house during COVID and just screen time all day, learned how to trade, got liquidated a bunch, got slightly better. And yeah, now I work at Monad, run their Twitter, and do a lot of the community growth stuff behind the scenes. So, thanks.
It's fine.
My name's Veronica. I do BD at Eclipse. We are a Solana virtual machine layer 2 on ETH.
Hi, my name is Neil. I work on this thing called Superteam. We help take Solana to new markets. So I've been a core contributor there for the last 4 or so years.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like everyone on this panel has been in the crypto scene doing something for quite a while now. So I guess the first question that I'll ask you guys is, what do you guys think, or how important is the role of BD in the crypto ecosystems that you guys operate in, whether that be Solana or Monad? I'll keep it broad for now.
I guess I can go first because we're the only one without a live product. It is very important for us, especially right now, because our goal is day one to have a whole ecosystem of apps that users actually want to use. So a lot of the work right now is definitely getting connected with high quality EVM teams that can leverage Monad's throughput to improve and bring new experiences on chain.
Yeah, I think in a previous life I used to be a lawyer. So one thing I carry forward even now is my answer to most questions is still it depends. At least from the sort of international growth perspective, how much BD you need to do or not depends on sort of what the country is. Some countries sort of have that style where they need people to come and talk to them and meet them and shake hands, and they require sort of active work from the sort of operating entity. Some countries have cultures where they just sort of see what's sort of broadly popular amongst the masses or amongst the traders or amongst the devs. There you probably don't need to do much, but in the forward case, you'll do a lot. Some countries are highly permissioned, where companies only get involved with you if sort of you have the government's blessing. In those places, you have to do a elevated version of BD, government relations. So again, it just depends on what country, what time, what sort of stage you are at. And every time, instead of deploying boilerplate cookie cutter BD function, you figure out what the sort of goals in the timeline is and then think about it accordingly.
Yeah, I think kind of my take on this, right, at least from an ecosystem angle, right, is BD is really important, whether you have a live product or not, because we are kind of at the front line of our users, right? Because you have the devs, you have product, you have everybody else on the team, and they don't necessarily interact every day with who end up being your end users. So it's kind of our mission to be able to make the content more digestible, but really explain the story, explain what it is that we're looking to build.
Yeah, so we don't have a product or plan to, but I'll say this as somebody who allocates capital, obviously across a number. And this is a little bit of a history thing too, is there's been so much capital that's flown into crypto, and it's pretty much grown horizontally, right? It's not just Bitcoin, it's not just Bitcoin ETH, it's not just Bitcoin ETH Solana. It's just, you've got 4 or 5 different large projects that have raised material funding every quarter sort of like hitting market, there's only so many eyeballs, and the ability to sort of like divert attention like matters pretty materially. Like you can't just win always by having the best tech. Like that's probably a precursor to being able to win, but keeping interest and keeping eyeballs like in, especially now, because it's growing like even quicker and quicker by the day, is a pretty material thing to make sure that you can have the ability to have long-term success, right? Like you need to be able to like get to the point where having the best iteration actually like matters.
To that point on keeping eyeballs in your ecosystem and you know having users, Neil, I want to ask you the question: like, what is something that Solana does well that no other ecosystem gets right at the moment, given you know the user growth that Solana has experienced in the past year?
Yeah, I think one thing Solana does really well is it's a bad thing that turned out to be a very good thing over time. 3 years ago, compared to all the sort of previous big crypto things, Solana was like a Silicon Valley project with fancy venture capital investors and multiple rounds of funding and all of this sort of like more startup tech style early days. So we're called centralized for the longest time. Over time, a lot of those things have decentralized, but I think the culture of that time, the product focused culture remains, versus like, for example, a lot of times when there's some update to the Ethereum Foundation, it's like very chaotic, but still there'll be people fighting, there'll be like a DAO war, there'll be like a EIP, but still, with all that noise, a lot of times people will miss it because unlike how we sort of prefer to do things over in the Solana world, there is no coordinated effort across multiple entities to sort of focus on the one thing when it does come out. Like the most recent example is Blinks. When Blinks came out, it was like a primitive built by Solana Labs, which Solana Foundation Ecosystem Engineering did something on top of to make Blinks. The BD team worked with 20 partners who were live on day one. There was a Superteam grant program for devs around the world who wanted to build their own Blinks. There was a marketing function for any new Blinks that came up for sort of like the marketing support and sort of creator-led growth for them. So all of these things happen at the same time and across like 30 companies, 30 completely separate projects, because the focus was always on Blinks, and it was like a coordinated effort culture that I think Solana does really well and has had for the longest time. So on day one when Blinks was announced, that thing had like 5 million impressions, which is in crypto, which is chaotic and has fractured attention all the time. It's pretty rare there. So I think that's something we do reasonably well.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree with that. I'm gonna ask a similar question to Veronica and Jack. What is Eclipse and Monad gonna have to do to have that competitive advantage that no other ecosystem can have in order to drive similar growth that Solana has had?
Yeah, I guess like I would see us in a fairly similar boat, right? We're newer ecosystems. I think, right, Solana has done a lot of things really well, whether that is building out their developer community, but really building out a certain vibe to the community. I think that's also really important, right? Because if you are just looking to get devs in your community, but you don't actually make yourself really relatable to the end user, there is a problem. There won't be any users coming in. So I think that's kind of an angle we'll be looking at that I think Monad's doing super well in terms of like community building, right? Being able to be accessible for people who either have questions or who want kind of like that community to be able to really relate to, right? I think being somebody new to crypto, it is really scary to be able to, go up to people and talk to them. But like, hey, like we're in the same community, we've used the same dApps, right? We've been kind of like fostering something together, right? Being able to kind of like find your friends and also potentially your future kind of business partners, right, is something that we're looking to foster alongside being incredibly present as, our new dApps are deploying at the moment, right? I think thinking about things in a way where maybe it's not scalable, right? But it's early on. So I want to be really present for a lot of the dApps that we're currently working with. And maybe that's not a process that we can fully scale. But, being there at the beginning and making sure everything works cohesively, making sure they feel like they belong here, right? They find the right partners within our ecosystem to work with are all things that we'll be kind of doing.
Yeah, and I agree with everything said so far. I think one thing that we really focus on is letting the the community really like drive the boat on what we're going to be doing. So like if you're like, oh, we are really excited about Dex on Monad or Clobs or whatever, that builds its own hype internally within our community. People get super excited and become like super fans for these projects that are very early stages, but they need help gaining traction and like building like visibility for themselves. So a lot of Monad community members will like kind of super fan and convert to 3-4 apps on the chain, and they become the guys that are like the spokesman saying, hey, this is actually a really good app. Everyone in the community should come check it out. And that kind of leads to virality in a sense of like, if it takes off in the community and people start talking about it, it can get outside the community and then actually bring new eyes in. And then the second level of that is the community itself. Everyone has different talents and things that they can contribute. So it's actually been very effective for like, Monad native team needs someone to help run the Twitter. We have someone in the community that knows the culture, that's very well versed, that we can immediately place at these companies. I think it's up to like maybe 50 community members now have been placed at Monad native teams. So that's one thing we really try to focus on is like whatever the people want to see, like enable them to create it on their own so that it will exist on day one and they can actually use it and take advantage of it.
You guys mentioned community a lot, and obviously for crypto communities, Twitter is really the social media platform that powers that. Dan, from an investor's point of view, what do you think ecosystems can do to leverage Twitter the best, whether that be posting memes, controversy, what have you?
Yeah, I think being active in CT is like useful. I wouldn't over-index on it as like sort of what you'd be like spending time on. I think being present there and like sort of that's one of the few areas you're gonna have a direct dialogue like with your user base. If you have like a Discord, which everyone seems to do, that's like another, right? But you're not gonna have a good way to sort of be able to have contact with like all your users and get feedback and like whether or not it gets culty and weird and like whatever, like that's fine, like that's all good. But I'll say this because just to touch a little bit on the point you guys are making, I think the single biggest thing that you see about projects that are like very successful is that the user base has a ability to participate in the upside. I think Solana in particular did this well. Well, not that you had a choice in it, but like the market appreciation of the asset brought a lot of people in it that became sort of advocates of it because of that appreciation. And they were sort of able to participate in it. What has happened, if you fast forward a lot of these things, is that a lot of those gains have been sort of privatized in like larger funding rounds that happen later, and like you don't see that broad-based exposure happen. I think that's like a big issue that a lot of teams have had as they go to market, where they're launching at very high valuations and there's sort of no ability for sort of that gain to be happening with the users of the protocols. Crypto's a little weird like that because you don't think about this with stocks. Like most people like that consumer use products don't like really think about the stock price of the asset that is powering it sort of in the back. But in crypto, it's like obviously very like relevant to the sort of whole ecosystem. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing that really matters. And like the one thing that you've seen of all of the bigger assets that have maintained sort of their valuations and continue to have success, like all sort of came from lower level cost basis and like grew sort of into their valuations.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. For the next topic, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. For those who are like Web 2 native in the audience, obviously growth is important to all organizations, not just Web 3. How do you guys think Web 3 strategies of growth are different from Web 2, and how can Web 3 teams learn from those in Web 2? We're gonna kick it off with Neil.
So again, like Superteam's not a product, so we probably have and in Web 2 there's not much in tech without a product. So I don't probably have the greatest sense of how these are different. But I think one thing I personally think is that people, so like community, I keep coming back to community all the time, but like community gets involved in crypto projects much earlier than most other industries, where he was just joking that Monad doesn't have a product, but Monad's not live yet, but Monad has one of the biggest sort of super fan communities around the world. If you look at the Twitter page, you'd think that it's like taking over a country or something, but when you ask them where it is, it's like it's not live yet. So I think this is something very unique to crypto teams, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, but I think you just have to, it is the reality for sure. So you just have to adjust to that and make sure that you account for outside interest as early as possible into your sort of like trajectory. If you have a token, it comes after that, obviously. But even without that, we've seen that it becomes a thing. So I think that's the biggest difference where it was hard to tell what specifically you should do differently, but sort of my meta thing would be just make sure whatever you do, there is some place for, or like you think about how you will deal with public interest in your thing.
Yeah, I would say it's similar, but the biggest difference in my opinion is that like the users actually have somewhat ownership and like a sense of like, oh, this thing that I am using, I'm also invested in. I care about how it performs. Where like you could go buy a McRib and not care about the price of McDonald's stock. Like they're just completely uncorrelated. So in crypto, it's very different. Of like, there's a reason people are joining these things early, joining Discord, spending lots of time in it. Like sure, they have financial motives, but there's a different level to it. Of if they really like the product and are making money on it, they're going to tell everyone they know about it. So that kind of effect is different. I think one thing that's very similar is there's like the general psychology of people building associations of your brand and what like they think about it and feel about it and how often they think about it all stands very similar. People love to talk about how Red Bull, like they don't market their drinks, they market their athletes. So I'm not going on Twitter and posting our like docs all day long. Like if people want to read the docs, most of them will do that. I think you can build associations with your brand and bring people in through like very similar means to Web2, and it's actually pretty effective.
Yeah, I mean the financial connection is just like different, right? Like you really don't have that in. I mean, people own stocks, and they probably own stocks and brands and companies that they like care about, but it's the underpinning of so much of what's going on in any of these apps, or in like the price matters, and like it matters especially to your users. So that's just a whole different level that you're like dealing with in the Web3 space that you just don't have in the Web2 like corollary.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see it as well is because users are getting involved so early, right? There's a lot more of an attachment to it on top of financial incentives, right? I think one things that our ecosystems all do really well is that we take in feedback from our users, which is not something that, you know, like traditional Web2 companies do, right? Like if I'm complaining on Twitter about Red Bull, right? Like, oh, I don't like the taste of your drinks. They're not going to do anything about it. Whereas like for us, right, as we're getting feedback, we're kind of like ideating on it and trying to make it better for our users. So there's definitely a bigger stake for them. So something to keep in mind as you're thinking about growth in crypto.
Yeah. Jack, you mentioned the ownership and financial aspect of Web3 companies. How important is it for these Web3 companies to utilize tokens to kind of incentivize user growth, whether that be through an airdrop or through launching their own meme tokens?
My lawyer would say not to answer this one, so I'll just say you show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll pass that question on to Dan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's an unfortunate reality that if there's not a token in the sort of plans or in the runway, like it's going to be harder for you to bootstrap a user base that cares about the product, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you still have the best way to like slice bread, like people will eventually find your way to it. But you run the risk that somebody who is willing to take that route is just going to undercut you because they're able to get such broad-based like interest and exposure to it so much like faster and quicker, and like you get like that feedback, and it's a great financing vehicle too. Like that's like the reality of it, is like you might just be outgunned from like a monetary perspective. So those are like the big issues. Like it has become very hard, I think, to compete without a token, but it's not impossible. But it definitely, this is why you see most things go the token route. As to like whether or not raising like a meme coin, I don't know. If that's going to be the standard, like so be it. But I'm a little skeptical that's just like a flash in the pan sort of thing.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like growth strategies change so often in crypto, given just how fast the industry moves. Like a year or two ago, you know, these growth strategies looked way different. Like projects were using NFTs to incentivize users to do things. Now it's you know, meme coins, and you know, earlier this year it was airdrops. How do you guys think? What will the next meta be for growth? Like for next year, like will it still be meme coins? Will AI be added to that? Like what do you guys think?
Oh, I mean, I have an opinion. I don't know if
We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I think you're starting to see a little bit of pushback where, so in 2017 we had ICOs, and for all their warts, they kind of worked as a way to get the token cheaply in the hands of like the user base fast. They're just outright illegal is the problem, right? Like the kids cannot do them in a compliant manner. I'm not saying they're going to come back, but I think you're seeing people try to do like these hybrid solutions where like, you've got Echo. There's a couple other like similar structured ones. I think Delphi is working on one. But anyway, people are trying to recreate that in a compliant manner. And I think somebody's going to hit it close enough that we'll see that go as a dominant funding vehicle to get more sort of, users or retail, like however you want to like talk about it, but like basically get it in more hands than just sort of the traditional venture investors, which is like what it unfortunately happened on the back of like the SEC sort of coming down on the industry.
Yeah, my immediate answer was going to be Echo. I think investing syndicates and stuff like that will get a lot more popular because everyone right now is like, VC coins are unfair and bad, and I don't like them because I'm not invested in it, but everyone else is. So I think that side definitely grows a lot. I think there's also something to be said for the side of people that don't even know they're interacting with crypto and just it's the rails that their apps that they use and love run on. Maybe a bit of a barbell approach there, but I think there will be a spectrum there of people that are either really interested in the crypto investing side or users that barely know the crypto is what's enabling the thing they use, but they love the product itself, and that's why they come back to it.
Yeah, I think I would have a fairly similar take as that, right? I think long term, right, the idea of crypto is not necessarily knowing that you're interacting with crypto, right? I think we're in a era right now where people are still talking about blockchains, but long term, right, I would just want people to highlight dApps that they think are really good experiences. Maybe, you're in an emerging country and you want to fight inflation, hold stables, right? But you don't know that this is crypto rails. Or maybe, you are a degen gambler and you want to buy like meme coins, right? But you don't necessarily know that it's crypto rails and you're just buying into the culture. Like this is kind of like, I think, the overarching idea I have. And yeah, on the institutional side, right, getting more access, because at the end of the day, crypto is meant to kind of democratize access. And right now it's just hard. Like you could be investing in different types of tokens and it ends up rugging. There isn't really like the right processy around it for at least like normal users to come in.
I'll skip this one.
I just look as a data point. We've done probably 6 or 7 Echo deals. We've like basically portfolio companies we've invested in. We've been like, hey, do you have any interest in doing this? Like it's new, but it potentially sort of gets it. And they're probably raising between $200,000 and $300,000, and they're doing it in like 15 minutes to an hour. And like this is with, I don't know, call it 2,500 people in a syndicate, and like I don't know, maybe 10,000 people total on Echo. Right. So like if you think if that number gets to 500,000, like this is suddenly a whole different vehicle, I think. I have 1 million like users on the platform. Like I don't know how many are going to do the full KYC and get that far, but I think there's a real trend there.
Are these only open to accredited investors?
So I think it's dependent on location, but in the US definitely.
But it is open to the US if you're accredited.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting. Because my general sort of like the thing I keep thinking about is that if you try to do too much compliance in the US, you sort of miss out on US retail, and most like sort of buying ability only lies with on a global scale. It's still with the US. So if you block out the US, I don't know how big things get.
It's not worth it. It's over.
Yeah, that's sort of something like that. So I don't know how.
I mean, they're doing it with the US right now. So I until there's a regulatory push the other direction, I think that's going to remain.
Interesting.
If there was a company that you guys had to point to show someone that this is what you guys should study when it comes to growth and how to get users, what company would you guys say has done a great job at scaling and just achieving exponential growth, if you will?
I think it's. I'll just take that. Sorry. I think it's Moonshot, hands down. For those who don't know, Moonshot is this iPhone meme coin trading app that allows you to buy. It's like allows you to buy meme coins straight with Apple Pay. It has the best sort of transaction success rate for any app like this. They're so fast to list meme coins. They're sort of degenerate and shameless about it. They've baked in good sort of growth hacks for every meme coin that lists. They can give a portion of the meme coins to Moonshot, not for them, but for them to sort of distribute for referrals and sort of other sort of viral social things like that. It's so good. A couple of weeks ago, like Moodang was all basically Moonshot. It's one of the only apps I've seen recently that's gone viral on TikTok. It's a couple of weeks ago, they added 35,000 users in a week. 35,000 new wallets interacting with Solana like multiple times a day in a week, which is absurd to me. And I was writing about this a few days ago where people keep talking about the fat app thesis where nobody knows what sort of underlying L1, L2 you're interacting with. It's all about the app. But I think Moonshot is fat app thesis on steroids where meme coins are literally using Wormhole to port over to Solana just so that they can be used by, just that they can list on Moonshot, which I've never seen anything like this before. And I'm extremely excited about it. It's like the clearest answer I have to this question.
I have a great answer that you guys are gonna hate. Ripple,
Good.
and here's why. And no, I'm gonna explain this. All right, Ripple's a gigantic asset. It's top 4 or 5 market cap constantly. I would bet all the people in this room have a negative opinion of it. But if you talk to a random person who has like medium like interest like of crypto, like bought a little bit of it, I can bet you 50-50 that person owns Ripple. And they own it, and they do. And I'm telling you, they do. And the reason people love it is because the asset's basically just gone up over the course of its lifetime, right? If you look at it from like the inception, and like it's just basically people who participate in the upside, and they love it. And that's not a guarantee, but like it is a sort of showing that very much matters, like the cost basis that your user base like sort of gets in. And like you have this army, for like lack of a better word, of people that are like just still advocating for it.
Yeah, it's, I guess similar vein, but like USDT by Tether is easily the most utilized thing for like non-gambling purposes right now. There are full countries that like pay in USDT all the time. I think in terms of actual marketing product growth, I really like how Phantom has approached it. Pretty much all of my friends that get onboarded to crypto now do it through a Phantom wallet because it is just so easy and they kind of understand it. But then like even be able to use the web browser within the app or what they do on Twitter to like drive people towards new features or highlight the trends that are going on within Phantom right now. I think they do a really good job.
Yeah, I guess for me, right, kind of taking the more degen route, right, a poly market, probably. Any types of dApps where I know my friends who are not in crypto have used, I think has done a really good job. So I think especially with the election coming up in the US, Polymarket is one of the most downloaded apps right now, I think, within is it social or some specific category on the App Store? A lot of people are using it because they know they have, you know, these markets that are constantly moving. And I think on kind of the other side of the spectrum, right, another project that has done really well is Helium. There's most of their users aren't necessarily crypto native, right? So for me, right, being able to kind of break into, you know, the traditional markets, the normie markets, and being able to abstract away, right? I've met a lot of Helium users who don't know they're interacting with crypto, but find it really interesting that finally they can get really cheap T-Mobile or really cheap, you know, telecom, and also get rewarded for using the network is something that, you know, I think attracts a lot of normie users.
If you look at all these companies that you guys just mentioned and think about something that they have in common that they've done, you know, to achieve their growth, what would you say that one thing would be if a new team was asking you how they can tackle the cold start problem and scale? A new team in Web3, whether that be in Solana or Monad or what have you?
I think first I would say make sure you're building a really good product. That's a cop-out answer, but like if you're building some kind of irrelevant trash thing, it's going to be really hard to build a big community around it. So definitely spend time refining your product and building there. And I think in terms of actually growing it, how to approach the Twitter and growth side, it varies a lot product to product. Like you'll sell different things differently. But the one piece of advice I would give is that when you have 0 followers, you can afford to take a lot more risks because if your tweets are terrible, no one will see them. But that's how you get bangers, is if you take some risk and like put something out there, they'd be like, wow, I can't believe this protocol's account just said this. So I would definitely say you can afford to take more risk when you have less followers and when you don't have a product or token that people will be mad at you for. So that's how I would approach it. Like going from pure 0 follower account is like, just let it fly and try to be attention grabbing.
Yeah, I think one thing I keep talking about, which is some mix of how we think about sort of communities at Superteam, and also some standard Web2 wisdom, is that you have some, regardless of how small, have some set of super fans. If you have those, everything sort of, you have your first sort of advocates for everything you do. They'll be our first testers, users, investors, everything. So just make sure that in some part of the world, in some vertical, doing something, you have some group of super fans as part of one of your sort of core building blocks. And if you have that, everything becomes easier down the line, I think.
+1 to super fans, very important.
Yeah, I think for me, right, kind of agree on the super fans. I think when you are just starting, right, really listening to the OG community who is actually providing feedback, especially if, you know, there's no incentives around it, right? They're here because they know you have a good product. They're willing to kind of help experiment around it, right? Listening to them is really important. So +2 on super fans.
I think it's pretty important as you're building out your product and you're like hiring people initially. I think you want to pull people who are like in the industry as much as possible, and especially ones who like are a little vocal and like active sort of with other communities. I think that'll do you a lot of good as you sort of go to build it out.
Okay, I know we're running up on time here. I have one last question to ask, and then maybe we have time for one question in the audience. Jake actually wanted me to ask this because Dan's on the panel. But what is everyone's favorite meme coin? We can start with Dan.
Oh man, my favorite of the whole things. I gotta say bonk. I feel like I'm like legally required to say that because one of the guys who works for us is very involved in it. But no, I do. I think they were really early to the whole cycle. They were. I mean, who's the first? Right, Dogecoin's probably the first. But even before that, there was like other stuff. But they like sort of hit, I think, the recent wave pretty early, and they dragged like a lot of it through. So yeah, that's my answer. It's not a financial decision at all. It's just sort of what I like.
None of this is financial advice.
None of this is financial advice.
Yeah, I like Whiff a lot because I printed on it.
Oh my god.
Yep, bonk beta printed. Sorry, but I don't hold it anymore. Two that I actually like are Mog and Lock-In because all of my normie friends say it without even knowing the meme coin exists. So I think that's bullish on the meme as a whole.
Yeah, I guess like probably the only meme coin I still properly hold, or yeah, Bonk and probably Mog. In a sense, right, I really like Mog because, yeah, again, my normie friends all use the term, like, get mogged, right? It's quite funny, it's catchy, and then I really like Bonk in a sense because they really built out what is the precedent of a, like, strong meme coin community. And, yeah, I mean, Mudang also, but...
Yeah, I think again, triple check, no financial advice. I like Bonk with these are like goat and fart, and the sort of the AI, the terminal truth AI things. I like Moodeng, but like somebody recently asked me this question, and my sort of one of my more sort of high theory answers to this was that people kept talking about like the high theory version of meme coins was always that it's a financialization of memes, it sort of spreads culture, whatever, this and that. I never held even a single token, but my sort of high theory answer to this is my favorite meme coin is the Mautai coin. Because it's the first time where, because of the meme coin and their activations, I got into a real thing. So I had no idea what Mautai was before, but once somebody told me the Mautai coin and they sort of like brought Mautai to me at a party, every airport I go to, I instantly noticed Mautai at the duty-free shop now. And Mautai is this like 55% strong Chinese liquor that's suddenly sort of growing around the world. And it tastes, I don't know if somebody's a big fan, it tastes absolutely horrible, but I now love it. So that's my, so I won't shill Mautai the coin, but I will shill Mautai the alcohol. That I'm not too into China, but I think these things they've really gotten right. So try that out.
All right, yeah, that was great. That was great. I think we have time for one question if anyone has one. This guy right here in the front.
Cool. Yeah. So you talked about how growth is different in Web3 for companies. Something I've noticed is I feel like some companies almost go too far off the rails with their marketing and stuff. So how should Web3 marketing be the same as what we're doing? Like, how are we making mistakes of differentiating? Because I feel like most people don't care about a lot of the stuff that we as nerds care about, but that's how we market it.
Definitely don't say wag me or use the rocket emoji. I think that sets you up to fail. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, hire a 20-year-old Zoomer that's in touch with the culture and kind of just let them cook. I think the full top-down corporate approach will kill that. a lot of, I don't know, the creativity side of it is what attracts most people. You kind of have to be in touch with like the current trends, memes, narratives that people actually like.
Yeah, I think across everybody's answers, there were a few things where the way we talk about it is different, but actually they're the same things for Web 2 and Web 3. So you want to, as you mentioned, hire some insiders versus some outsiders, so you have a good balance that helps you get into an ecosystem and blast it out better. Obviously, focus on have a good product, like doing whatever community and growth stuff. If you do, it's like with the best community and a bad product, you're going to still over time fail. So you want to obviously focus on the product or whatever the real thing is, and then do everything around it. And 3, I think even having your super fans, it's like pretty standard Web 2 insight that sort of a small market first, make sure that they love you, have some version of monopoly there, and then expand from there. So I think there are a lot of these things that you can do that are they're basically pretty similar with different coating around it in Web 2 and Web 3.
All right, cool. I think we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for listening.